Hey guys, I'm Mike, and welcome back to No Limits, the Thriller Podcast. Even though we don't have Chris with us tonight, we have another special guest I will introduce in just a minute. But this episode is brought to you by our patrons in the Thriller Pod Book Club. They make this episode and all our episodes possible. So if you want to find out more about how to join this exclusive group of Thriller fans, we're always talking content, always talking books. The group chat never stops. Just go to thrillerpod.com and click on the book club tab. We could definitely use you. We'd love to see you in the group chat if you're enjoying the podcast. But let me cut to the chase, introduce our special guest, a friend of the pod, a good friend in general. I feel like he's been my life coach lately. Welcome back, Tyler Boer.
What's going on, Mike? Listeners, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a good day.
We've had, over the last few weeks and months, just a couple of good old chats. Just give each other a call, shoot the shit, catch up on life. And I feel like I've taken some of the advice you've given me about some things to heart. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, I hope it does what it's intended to do and helps out and makes things a little bit easier to digest for you. And I think, what was that? It was last November. I was down your way around the time of my birthday in November, and we were able to grab dinner, which was awesome, meeting in person. I think this might be our first podcast since then. So
I think you're right. Many a phone call, many chats, but first podcast and our first opportunity to really dig into Dark Wolf. You and I texted about it a little bit throughout the season, but I don't really know your full thoughts on it. And now that today we are covering episodes 6 and 7, for anybody who doesn't know Thriller Pod, we are the after show. So we are spoiling episode 6 and 7. We are getting into the finale. And so I'm kind of curious. Chris and I have wavered between some episodes we gave an A-, we dipped down to a B+ at times. I think Chris was a little higher when we talked episodes 4 and 5. And I think I'm still hovering in that A- range. So I'm real curious to hear just overall your thoughts on the show. What was it like getting into episode 1? And then what was it like reaching this finale with episode 7?
for me, I rewatched the original show, season 1, and I'm not always listening to different audiobooks and stuff, but I'm at least like listening to some, podcast or interview that Jack's doing. So I'm trying to stay in the hemisphere of what he has going on. And in my opinion, I think rewatching the original season helped. It helped a little bit better to like refresh your memory on things. I know you and I both have some mixed feelings on that first season of the original show. I think that they ditched some stuff that didn't work for that afterwards, that once they realize, hey, this like probably isn't a long-term thing we should continue, they kind of ditched things. So I think maybe they learned a couple of lessons in that first season. And I think that this one, while I think I grew to appreciate that first season a little bit more. Not that I disliked it or hated it. I was being very nitpicky about it. I mean, everybody does that. Anybody that likes Harry Potter books nitpicks the movies. Anybody that likes Game of Thrones books nitpicks the show. So everybody that likes the source material usually nitpicks that type of thing. And so, of course, that's what us as fans are going to do as well. So I think rewatching it helped me appreciate that first season a bit more. I think if I hadn't watched it, I think I would think this is probably better in general. I think if you guys are dipping down to a B+ on maybe some of the weaker points of this season, I think it still means that it's a great product. For only cranking out 7 episodes, I think they do a lot for 57-minute episodes. And I think in general, my opinions watching them, that they got better with each episode. I think the writing got smoother. This felt a lot more like a Jack Carr ran story, rather than maybe like the unreliable narrator type story that we kind of got given in the first season. I think this is definitely more of that globetrotting espionage that we were promised. That was like the biggest descriptor that we were given going into this, and that it's not like a mental thriller. It's more of like a globetrotting espionage tale, and it definitely is. I feel like there's some twists that maybe don't deliver as well, because you can kind of see them coming, but they do that on purpose. I mean, they give you the tools to see what's about to happen. So where I think you can see it coming, I don't think it's like overly predictable. I really like the amount that they used Chris Pratt and Bravo in it. The first 1 or 2 episodes, and then the finale, which we'll get to. In general, I thought it was very well done and a really good first of possibly many seasons. We don't end up with maybe the scene that I wanted the most, which is Ben being sold the plot line to
Mm,
betray his brothers.
yeah,
And we don't
yeah.
see that. So the fact that we're missing that pivotal moment of how he gets bought in, or how he buys into this conspiracy, um, is missing. So I'm curious to see us eventually get to that. And I think that they did all the right things. Um, and I know in the past, Mike, you and I have talked about maybe the not so successful launch of the first season, but I know that they haven't really, that Amazon doesn't really disclose numbers, but you can usually tell the success of something based on the speed of like a renewal. I think Terminal List's renewals of this and True Believer was a little slow,
Hmm.
whereas like something like Reacher, I think the first season maybe dropped the pilot episode and they renewed it for 2 more. So
Give
that
me more.
obviously had a
Yep.
huge, yeah. And so they're hitting like a target demographic. I've been listening to a lot of Jack's interviews he's been doing on this PR run for Cry Havoc, and he's actually like lifted the curtain a smidge on kind of how some behind the scenes stuff goes. And he said that he doesn't know what the numbers are, but they were clearly good and they're hitting an audience that Amazon has a hard time reaching. And so um he's come up with a couple of cool terms that I think we'll hear on, here in the future episode maybe, but um, I'm interested to see what all he has to say in that department. But back to episode 7, what did you think going from 6 into, or I'm sorry,
Yep.
5 into 6, my mistake. What do you
Y-
think?
Yeah. No, I thought they really landed the plane. So overall, once we get to the finale, I feel like they stuck the landing on some stuff they really need to inform the reader, inform the watcher, because there's a lot of mystery box, and some shows lose me when there's too much mystery box. You're just constantly wondering who's on which side, who's good, who's bad. A light touch of that is nice. We almost flirted with too much of that, and then by the time we knew Jed was in bed with Cyrus, and we knew those two were plotting, and the guy we thought was the shepherd, Vahid, was not the real shepherd, I thought that plane landed. So, like, what could have become a Nuke on the Loose story that just, why are these guys having to chase down nukes and stop World War III or whatever it is? Or, I'm
Yeah,
glad it didn't become that. And it became
yeah,
instead a more personal journey of Ben and Rafe and their relationship. And the Iran stuff, to be honest, to me was a sideshow in a good way. It didn't need me to be bought in and gripped on who's got the bearings. Is Iran going to make a nuke? I was actually concerned who's lying to Ben? Who fucked over Rafe? Is Rafe going to get them?
yeah,
That's what I really wanted to know. And I think they really stuck the landing on how it drove those two apart, blood brothers. And that conversation on the boat, holy shit, I think that's in episode 6 when Rafe splits.
yeah.
I want to revisit that
It's
for a
towards the
minute.
beginning.
Yeah. I mean, that I think just encapsulates the most important parts of this show is the personal journey of Ben and Rafe, their relationship, to go from long live the Brotherhood, unbreakable bonds, be forced into the shitty situation where they lie for each other, they cover for each other. Unfortunately, they have to take the hit for it. And then they still have to go through they're still iron sharpens iron, right? They're still going through the forge of the CIA stuff. They're clearly different people, and they're testing the bonds of that brotherhood. And it's put to the ultimate test when they each have to be who they are. And it leads to this conversation. I mean, just listen to this writing. This is not only amazing stuff if it were in a Jack Carr book, this is amazing dialogue if it's in any movie, any thriller, any book. It's just phenomenal writing, period. When Rafe says on the boat, "That's not who we are. That's not us." Fog of war, brother, isn't it? Two sides trying to do what's right. It's shitty, but it happens. I never thought I'd see this day. The great Rafe Hastings afraid to finish the fight. I'm going to let that one go. I was like, oh shit, he's going to throw down with Rafe. And it could have became this very cliche. They just brawl it out right there. They're tussling around, rolling around on the boat. And I was like, no, because Rafe's character is the bigger man. And Rafe
Yeah,
was the
I
bigger
think
man.
Yeah, I think whenever you have that brawl out moment and stuff like that, they kind of get their aggression out and almost break even in ways
Exactly.
in those moments. And I
But
think
not
this
here.
being a verbal exchange digs a little twist. It twists the knife a little
A
deeper
little deeper.
than a
Sure.
brawl would have been. And so I think you get to see why Ben is so untrusting of Rafe in the first season of the Terminal List, which is just a little peek that we got from a note, which was the insertion boat, I believe, to get to the island for the finale in the first season Terminal List. And Rafe left a note basically saying that we're even. And I think Ben makes a comment basically saying, "I can't believe you trust that motherfucker."
Yeah.
And from there, I think you kind of just know that Ben distrusts him. And I thought at the time it was because maybe the two of them were fighting over the best friend spot for James Reese.
For James,
But
for
now
Reese,
now
yeah.
you can kind of see it more as like almost like, for lack of a better term, like a bromance, like love triangle of dudes that are all, similar history. They all got in the teams together around the same time. In the books, Rafe beats James into the teams by a year. I don't know Ben's necessarily his detailed situation, but they're all close to the same rank. They're all on Bravo team, but it seems like more like Reese and Ben are equals. I want to say they were both LTs or lieutenant commanders, but I want to say it was definitely Reese as the lieutenant commander because that is his role. But this is supposed to be a few years prior to Terminalist, so I don't know what his rank and promotion status is like. But I know that obviously Rafe is I think it's maybe he's just the lieutenant or just under Ben.
But you're right. They don't reduce it to that petty Mean Girls teen drama,
Yeah,
in the teams. Who's my best friend? Does Reese like me more? Does Reese like me more? Because you could, in some sense, read a line like that from the Terminalist season 1. You could read that into it. And I think what this show is doing is saying that's not it at all. It's these two dudes in the fight with totally different worldviews. And I bet that's real. Our operators on the front lines, well, they have a lot in common, politically, socially, whatever, humorously, whatever they joke about. Some of them might come from very different worldviews and very different backgrounds. Most probably do not cut from the same cloth, but just a psychological profile, they're all going to be very different. And so what does it mean to throw these dudes in and have them work through that? Well, I think in the teams, you bond either way, but in the CIA, you take advantage of that, even if they're your brother. Like, that's the difference between ultimately Ben and the ground branch stuff they hint at the end. But anybody who's in the CIA, like a Jed, plays the game at a different level where human relationships don't mean what they meant in the teams. So
yeah.
I think
I
Jed
think
encapsulates that. And I think Ben has to come to terms and realize in episode 7 at the end, he essentially is Jed. He
yeah.
is that
He,
guy.
he's like Jed Jr.
Yeah,
But I think he is going to become what he hates. Where obviously
exactly.
he turns heel at some point. But something else I thought was interesting is whenever they switch over to CIA, I think it's Rafe says you got to find the brakes, brother, and he
Sure.
eventually says fuck the brakes.
Fuck the
But
brakes.
which is such a great line.
But that's when
There's a
they're
couple good
hunting terrorists.
lines. Yes, it
That's when
is.
they're
It's when
getting
they're all on the
revenge on the
same
terrorists.
page.
It's not when
Yes,
they're doing Jed's bidding about bearings and shooting German
correct.
intel
Correct.
officers and randomly killing people and having these ops in nightclubs that people are getting threatened. Like, that's when Rafe is like, okay, I got to go back to my upbringing of there are morals. There is kind of good and bad and evil. And
Yeah,
this guy
Rafe's
Jed is
breaking
getting us to
point.
blur it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Rafe's
So fuck
Rafe's
the
breaking
brakes
point.
works
Yeah, for
with
Ben.
terrorists.
Yeah,
But
for
with
sure.
terrorists too, either of them if
Yeah,
they're killing bad guys. But
I
Rafe
think.
is like, this is not killing bad guys anymore.
Well,
This is
yeah,
something else.
he's torturing friendlies was his breaking point,
Exactly.
which was an awesome scene. I was happy that they put that in there. It really felt more like a car story with a torture scene in there. I know people who aren't familiar with the material. There's a torture scene in every book, if not
Oh
two.
yes. Oh yes. Usually not with Rafe,
So
so that was an interesting choice.
no, yeah, usually it's not with Rafe. But man, I can't wait to see Tom Hopper more. I'm very curious to see how they mold True Believer, but we can get to that another time. I think you know going another point I'd like to make real quick before we move on from Ben versus Rafe and their decaying relationship is, you know, Reese comes and eventually saves the day with Bravo for Ben. And so he may be like, "Hey, my brother came for me. This is who I'm going to trust," and that's probably why he gives up so much of his time and tries to help him in the regular first season. Um, but what he doesn't realize is that Rafe was there too. Rafe was there on the tarmac at the airport, and he was going to help him, but just didn't have to. And I
And
think
so
that
that's the end of episode 6, right?
Yeah, so the end of episode 6 is the amazing um, attack on the private jet. Um, so let me
And
take a look.
the suspense with the bearings being tested in the hangar, that was the pinnacle of suspense for the show for me. And I didn't even care about the bearings too much, but I cared, like, what the hell is Ben going to do when these bearings pass the test?
Yeah, I thought it was a good reveal where you're expecting these bearings not to be up to snuff, and
Yep.
basically, okay, the 3 of
Then a
them are
shootout.
armed, but they're
Yep.
going to be fucked here in a second, and then it passes the test, and you can almost see Ben. That's when Ben like speaks English for the first time
Thank
to
you.
those bad
Yep.
guys. Yeah, and it was more of a like, oh fuck, is what he wanted to say.
And hold on, that scene is a major, major connection point to something. And we got to give a shout out to one of our Facebook followers, Paul Knowles. Paul Knowles on the Thriller Pod Facebook page. Man, we have the best listeners in the world. This dude found something and he said, the Iranian official who gets the bearings, I think he's the minister, right? Cyrus's or Kirush's boss. He says to him on the way out, the price wasn't high enough. And he like tempts Ben of like, you're selling out your country for whatever it was, 5 million or whoever knows. And he's just like, the price is not high enough for you selling out your country. And in the terminal list, I think it's James. It might be in the KD scene at the end with the debt cord. James is like, how much did they pay you? Or like, what was the price you paid? And Ben was like, the price was high enough. And I feel like this idea of Ben basically selling his soul and this Iranian guy mocking him is just going to have him descend into further madness and chaos. Yet at the same time, he thinks he belongs in that world. When he says in the lie detector test, when he's interviewing for CIA, which, dude, what a treat for the fans, the readers of the books.
But yeah, we'll get to that. Go ahead.
Yeah. But I mean, it just goes to show he's like, why do you want to work in Ground Branch? He's like, I belong here. So Ben getting played by Jed, that comment from the Iranian guy is all showing Ben's descent into madness that's going to psychologically mess with him, which is shown in the opening montage of him on the boat with the light and the dark in the music credits with Simple Man. And all of that comes to a head with this comment from Terminalist Season 1 when Reese is like, what was the price? And he's like, it was high enough.
Yeah, while you were talking, I was looking up some different firearms and stuff because now we're talking about the tarmac is I just wanted to confirm that the gun that Ben uses, he pulls it out of the trunk. It's the M249 saw that
I was
he
wondering if that
just
was a saw because,
absolutely
yeah, that thing goes to
yeah
town.
yeah, it looks like he has a 200 round drum on it. But yeah, he just absolutely Swiss cheeses that fucking PJ.
Opens
And
it up.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Something else I came across real quick that caught my attention is that Jed Habford, when he uses his silenced pistol, it is a black Walther PPK, which I think we can get into a little bit of how does the book writing and the show writing either conflict or mesh and mold. You never really saw much shotgun action in the books until James finds his dad's in the trunk of the Wagoneer. And
Right.
then around the same time, he would have been writing the show and Ben's famous, the Mexican cartel base shootout. He
That
has
scene, yep.
the Beretta 1301 shotgun. So I think maybe, shotgun in the book and then, okay, let's bring a shotgun in the show. But here we're having a Walther PPK, which, is shortly after, and they would have been writing this around the same time that he did Red Sky Morning, which was his 7th book, which is like the homage to James Bond 007. And there's a Walther PPK used in that, which is just a cool detail. I just skimming. I was looking for the saw. I wanted to confirm that it was the M249 saw, but I stopped and I saw the PPK and I was like, oh, that's sick.
Let's be honest, the best weapon, though, and the best cameo is the tomahawk. When Reese shows up at Skyfall, which I'm calling that scene Skyfall because there were two things I was totally thinking at the final shootout in the Black Forest. One was Skyfall, and two is this book Fade by Kyle Mills. He wrote a really famous scene in that book of this character Fade, who psychologically is a lot like Ben. He's got a not so happy history with his military career and experience, and he does the exact thing in the house when he kind of like is going window to window, and then when he jumps into that like cocoon and rolls into the basement and has things rigged in the basement, he basically blows up a whole assault team coming at him. So it just felt like I was waiting for the helicopter to come and go around this house and just shoot out windows, like, and then like
Yeah.
M to be in this church
with Javier Bardem's there for some reason.
Exactly. I was just expecting that, but instead it's James Reese with the tomahawk, pops up.
Yeah.
And the whole crew. It's not just him. It's Boozer. Boozer makes a great entrance in that barn when Reese is giving him care.
I think
Good
out
stuff.
of like the Bravo team we see, I think we give a few more character names that aren't in the other show. I don't believe they're in the book, but the only other one is like Donnie Mitchell, which is played by Patrick Schwarzenegger in the first season. Wasn't there, but he is supposed to be a newer guy, I think, in that first season on the team. So he was the only face missing that is on that like OG team. But Boozer's
I was wondering about that list
the
of names.
guy.
Yeah, when he lists off all the guys that came with him and Boozer, I was like, is that all the exact same team that we've seen either in other seasons or in the books? I wasn't sure.
The only other time they really list off a team of guys is in Savage Son when they go to drop into the island. He has a team of dudes with him. That is really the only time I can think that reminded me of this finale. But I want to get to the finale, and then we'll get into some our theories and stuff. But first, the last big thing we talked about was the plane attack, which I thought was great. The most savage part of that episode is Ben cutting the dude's wrist off to get the briefcase back. Was fantastic. And
so
the
Jack
fact
Carr
that
to have that.
Amazon's willing to show that shit is awesome and a good sign that they realize that the savagery needs to be there, and that's part of the vibe.
Well, that's what Jack's been talking about on some interviews. Who is the demographic? And it's like, Rosie, my wife, even, she watched this with me. She's like, yeah, this is just made for you. Like, this is made for men. This is just made for men. They're 30s, 40s, 50s. Like, yeah, it's not my thing. And I was like, you know what? Almost little to no shows that I could say that for. So usually I'd be like, oh, I wish we could have watched them together. I wish you liked it. I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, we don't have any shows that do this shit. Like, if I am watching some cool show with an operator, it's so unbelievable because it's Hollywoodized. And then they'll have some, I don't know, they'll bring up some political point or whatever just because the producers force them to. And I'm like, you know what? Can you just make a goddamn good show that tells a story in universe without any external forces, political nonsense? And I feel like I'm okay if the show is just designed for a certain demographic. And like you said before, Amazon likes it too. Because Jack has said multiple times, Amazon at the negotiating table was pretty confident in the numbers, very happy about the numbers. Wouldn't say what it is, but it's like they came to us with some excitement that they were pulling in this demographic. So I think power to you. And if this show is not pulling in bigger numbers than the first Terminalist season, I would be shocked. I think this show, it's already number 1 on Amazon on streaming. I think it's going to blow Terminalist season 1 out of the water, and it's going to bring a lot of people to Terminalist season 1. And I think this season, more than the other one, makes people Terminalist fans for life. The first season, you may not be interested in coming back to it. You may not pick up the books. You may not want a season 2. You watch this one first, fuck, you're all in. You want season 2. You want season 3.
I agree 100%. I think that it was a really good move to put the colon and then have like a subtitle for this rather than making this like a second episode. Now, I do like that this has that beginning scene that takes place towards, I think, episode 2 of Terminalist. Or actually, it's like maybe halfway through episode 1. Anyways, to kind of flash you back into what's happening with Dark Wolf, with Ben at the helm of narrating and everything. There's a couple other things we need to touch on before we get to finale and theories and then True Believer stuff, which is I really loved Ben Taylor Kitsch's reading of his note. His narration was awesome.
Unbelievable.
I thought it was great.
Those monologues that they nailed, I read one before. It wasn't a monologue. It was the dialogue on the boat, the monologue of Ben reading his note. All of that to me screams Jack Carr. And the other thing that it almost read like one of his preludes. You know how Jack writes those letters to the reader before every book? And I will say that might be some of his finest writing, his essays.
I honestly wish I had just a book of his
those.
Of the, I think it's the prelude, and then at the end it's author's note. But you know what I also think is great is the prologue and epilogues sometimes are so great, and they're just great, like almost like cliffhangers or bookends.
Completely. Well. They're great little scenes that kind of could stand on their own. The one that comes to mind for me is Only the Dead. It's the first time we really jump into Tom Reese, and he's on the docks, and something happens with some assets on the docks, and then they meet up at a restaurant. Like, that whole scene was nothing to do with James Reese, nothing to do with the modern day timeline that was in the book, yet it informed so much about the plot. And it was just a really awesome written novella almost. Like a lot of them
Yeah.
almost are like novellas. And so to have that echoed in this letter that Ben's reading, it's like, it's philosophical. It's explaining his worldview. It's making Reese think about who Ben is in life and where he's at right now. I think that letter is a big reason that Reese picks up the phone and says, like, brother, you don't have to carry this alone. And instead of Reese being like, what I thought he would say, because this is Hollywood, tell me where you are, I'm coming. And instead,
Yeah.
Reese is just like, you don't have to shoulder this on your own. And that's the language I think veterans need to hear from each other. The same way Reese tells the guys, no one thanked our fathers for what they did in the wars they fought in. So as one of your commanders, I need you to know I'm grateful for what you're doing. I'm grateful for who you are and what you bring to the table. And so when Reese answers the phone and says, you don't have to shoulder this burden alone, I was like, that's all because he read Ben's letter and he knows the psychological profile that Ben is right now, and it's unstable. Like it's bad.
I like that in that moment too that James and at least Boozer, I think maybe some other Bravo guys are in a bar, and it kind of takes you back to, okay, that scene in the first season of Terminal List that actually isn't happening to James because he's concussed and having problems, but it's not uncommon for him and Boozer to be in a bar together drinking and stuff. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. He talks about how many times he read the letter and it's sticking with him. And he knows something's wrong. So I really enjoy that letter a lot.
I agree. And, you know, we haven't even talked about this whole time, but really the hero who saves the day, who's the link between these two and Reese coming to save Ben, is Mo. Mo contacted Reese. Like, I just think that shows how enmeshed he is in their friendship and this dynamic. He's basically one of the brothers. And I think Mo might have been the best part of the show. He saves the day with that phone call. And then when they're all together at the end, basically with Tal, which I didn't trust Elisa from the beginning. And I didn't really vibe with her. And I know maybe you're not supposed to. Mossad's always going to stab you in the back if it's part of their mission, like country first. But Tal, to me, I felt like appreciated the bigger picture. And she had the balls. Tal had the biggest balls of almost anybody in this season. Like, she was nonstop.
I mean, I love whenever Landry
Yeah.
tries to do what he was doing, and she ends up throwing a knife in his neck pretty deep, at least enough for him to bleed. And that was another part. I actually love Hemsworth as Landry. Now,
Sure.
I know that Jack has said he really enjoys him as an actor, and one of the questions I plan on asking him is, man, does it suck to like someone so much and have to fucking take their balls off with piano wire? Because I think it's going to be, I just want to see his reaction.
Don't spoil too much now.
Yeah. So I think that'll be.
Gendry, I mean, interesting character, but how he's used here is, it's expected.
You get to see his, like, his growth into what we know he becomes.
Exactly. But he also had to be this playboy fool, just wants in on the action. You know, he just wants action. And he had to be a little naive, a little rough around the edges. He had to not play well with the boys. So I think they handled him right. And I think the fact that you always coupled him and Mo were so smart, because that just rings True Believer. Instead of when they make what I'm going to call season 3, True Believer, really season 2, but I do think Dark Wolf in the long term is going to be considered season 1. I do think the Terminal List is season 2. I think True Believer will be considered season 3.
I would agree with you. But we're going to get other seasons of Dark
sequel,
Wolf,
right?
The inner thread here.
And
so I think that's when it's going to be thought of as 2 shows. It's going to be like how Game of Thrones and the House of the Dragon are viewed as separate entities, even though one's a prequel to the other.
That's true. I really do hope people who don't know anything about the books or the universe, I hope they start with Dark Wolf. I don't know if others agree with me on that.
Yeah, me too. I think so too. And just another quick thing. This is a unique situation we're not used to, where both shows are going simultaneously.
That's
usually
true.
The main show starts, ends. People loved it. So they're like, how can we get more out of this fan base? They do a prequel, and then they get that fan base to continue. This is a very unique situation where we have shows running at the same time that are in different timelines of the same universe. So,
but the genius of that being really complicated is pulled off in that, and I said this on our previous episode, Dark Wolf sets up True Believer way better than anything at the end of Terminal List could do. End of Terminal List actually made it hard for me to believe, whoa, True Believer is going to be the next season. Like, pump the brakes. That's going to screw people up. But now, after watching Dark Wolf, anybody who knew nothing about the books can go into True Believer and have a complete understanding. Mo, Landry, the CIA, Ground Branch, Wraith, Africa, his background, his morals, who the Hastings family is. You can go into that now at True Believer feeling great. The only one you may not know, which a show needs to establish new people, is Freddie Strain. So that's a whole nother thing that will have to come up. But that's what you save. Freddie didn't need to be forced into Dark Wolf because that wouldn't have made any sense at all. But you need to establish him and Reeser at some point in True Believer. So I love that that's the only nugget they chose to not preview or not have like a Easter egg of in Dark Wolf. And my other favorite Easter egg, Vic Rodriguez name drop. That means nothing to most fans who don't know the books. It means absolutely nothing. It was a throwaway line, but it was so good. It was so good for the readers.
It was, I was like, oh man, like I was like kind of,
Yes.
I wasn't disinterested, but I was like, okay, we're gonna wrap up here, and like he said that, and it like
They
makes
said
your
that name.
hair on your arm stand up a little bit.
Yep.
And I think that we didn't touch on any cameos, but Jack has 2 in this season. One's kind of brief and kind of cut. The second one's a little bit more evident, which I think is in episode 5, maybe 6.
Well, hold on. He was the German intelligence officer who comes out of the car, gets shot.
Yeah.
Did he have another cameo, or did they just replay that? I think they just replayed it.
He has another cameo where he's a security officer that talks to Jed, I believe, or at least walks past Jed Haberford.
Oh.
So there is another spot that Jack shows up in. And so it seems like they're maybe filming a couple. If they both make it, then great. If not, they plan on one maybe being cut, depending on what works best. But it seems like he's trying to get killed in every season of his shows, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I just looked up. They did cast Freddie Strain. It's Gabrielle Luna.
I heard they cast.
So he's been in. Yeah, he's been in some TV shows. He was in Terminator: Dark Fate, which was a 2019 one that wasn't fantastic. However, he was the like T-1000 liquid Terminator. So if you've seen that, which I think in that he was really cool. He's done some action films and stuff as well. So he'll fit the part really, really well, I think.
I have zero questions or concerns about casting after Dark Wolf. Like,
oh yeah, me too.
Some people with Terminalist season 1 brought up a couple of things. The Katie thing, we don't need to get into it. Some people were really hot and bothered by that. I personally was not. But after this season, casting is not a problem at all. Like, spot on.
I think the Katie thing can, just for a second, then we don't have to talk about her anymore. But I think the Katie thing can be reeled in because I think having a romance brings James back from like that savagery and brings him back and gives him that peacetime. Like his peace is in Montana with Katie. Like she is a big part of it, and I don't think it can be ignored to just for the sake of an action show. Like you have to humanize James. That's part of the greatness of him, is that he is like he is like plain Jane everyman, but he is like the prime predator when he gets set off, and he has to have that peacetime.
Yeah, well, that's why Africa has to happen, because Jack's even hinted he wasn't sure Amazon would be too happy with how long the Africa stuff was filmed. The same way, a lot of people were not happy about the first entire half of True Believer actually being that slow burn, build up recovery of him and the team of hunters and catching poachers on the Hastings Ranch. But I think that's part of Jack's genius in the book, is it's so necessary for the in-universe character. He has to have that path of healing. The way things happened in the Terminalist, you can't just cut all of a sudden and now I'm back on ops and I have a romantic relationship. And this woman that I just took hostage on this island and was a savage in front of now is falling for me. You need the healing piece, and you got to take time. So I think I heard him hint that the first 2 episodes of True Believer are a lot of Africa. And he said, they have a year to edit this thing. I think filming might have even wrapped. He said, in the year, I guarantee they're going to cut some of it down. But he goes, we spent so much time and money there. I don't think they could cut it down anymore below 2 episodes.
Yeah, they can't ruin their investment like that. And it is needed. And I'm happy to hear that it's the first 2 episodes instead of the first 1. And I think the first 2 episodes, like the first episode, I think is going to be sailing. The second episode is going to be Africa.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And then I think Freddie Strain's going to hop in from there. And then we would get 5 episodes of action. So in my opinion, upon the first read, I actually disliked the first half of that book. I was like, oh my God, let's go. Let's speed it up.
Let's get going.
But as time goes on and I read them more times or listen to them more times, I actually miss, if I haven't read it for a while, I miss that first half, because it is it's like the first half of Lord of the Rings, of Fellowship of the Ring. It is the
Completely.
only time it is peaceful and enjoyable. Of man, you know what? This is awesome, and like you could have like joyful music. Like I love the music in the first half of Fellowship of the Ring, but it's the only time that music hits, and that's why it's special. That's
It's
what
so
the first
special.
half of True Believer is. Is it's special because it's peacetime and it's a little boring, but it is so much character building and world building. Like all of the sailing stuff, him remembering college, Rafe, why they're important, because you don't get any of that in the first book. And I think all of that's going to be important because you don't get any of that in the first season. You only get that Rafe's important because of Dark Wolf. So maybe we don't have to spend so much time on Rafe's history with James, but I mean,
Exactly.
it's still important to back up a lot of these things. So
I can't agree more. That was always my favorite part of the book. And even when it was people had your opinion on the first read or the first impression, like, oh, this is a letdown after what happened in Terminalist. But come on, if you kept up the Terminalist level brutality,
you'd be burned out.
psychodrama, you'd be burned out and it would be so unbelievable. The Africa stuff to me added so much realism, so much, like I said, healing. He just lost his family, the tumor, this miracle call from a doctor that he'll be saved. The CIA has to kind of find him. He's so off the grid. It shows you the importance of the Hastings Ranch and the land and how much this family is tied to heritage. And Reese is part of that. Reese is viewed as part of that family. And I think that Africa stuff is so good. I can't wait to see it. It doesn't have much to do with with Dark Wolf, but I think it does because that would come out of the blue starting True Believer. And now it doesn't because Rafe has hinted at Rhodesia so many times. People are going to see
Yeah.
the African stuff and be like, got it.
Yep.
Reese and Rafe.
Yeah. I really loved him talking about Rhodesia during the torture scene and
Torture
stuff, and
scene, yep.
that background is super important. And I like whenever James is on the phone with Ben and he says that our Rhodesian friend is exploring some I think he says some official
Other
channels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's actually trying to collect evidence, go to CIA, clear all their names, take down Haverford, which I think Ben just sees as complete folly. Ben's like, at that point, after Rafe split, he's like, that's a waste. What are you even doing? The only way we come out of this is if I show up with the bearings, I expose the teams, and we get Tal on the comms to catch Haverford in a lie. And like, if we don't get that evidence, it's game up. And Rafe wants to be the good boy. Go tell the CIA my story, and they'll believe me. And Ben's like more of that realist, that like dejected realist who's like, nah, man, the hard work's got to be done. Like the hard work's got to be done. Can't give a quibble. Unless there's any other major scenes we might have missed or not covered. I just have two quibbles.
Go ahead.
The Cuds Force stuff. I didn't like it really the first time. It just became there's this super army on call, hiding out all across Europe, who's just going to flood a building with shooters or flood a street with shooters out of the blue. And they're actually tied to Iran, and everyone knew they were Cuds Force. And like, maybe these paramilitary groups are hiding out from other countries in Europe, ready to strike at a moment's notice. But when we did the tunnel shootout, I think episode 4 with the bearings and the German intelligence, I was like, God, this is too video game-esque. Like, these guys are just respawning. They're NPCs. They're just coming at it. We mow them down. We move on. Like, it was really good action, but it was the first time in the show I said, it's kind of bullshit. It's kind of like video game-esque. And then the next episode, they have the hostile shootout. Same amount of guys. Swarm the hostile. Massive shootout in the middle of a European city. To me, that's not a CIA story. A CIA story is not a massive shootout in a European city. It's like the more secret squirrel stuff, like they were starting to do at the nightclub, and in the nightclub going through the alleys, and how they had to chase Masood Danawi through the alleys of this sleepy city in this little village. To me, that's like more, if CIA ops go south and things turn hot, it's more that. It's not 50 to 70 guys pour out of a van around every turn and start fighting you in a hostel. And then they did it a third time where they just popped up at the Black Forest. I was like, I just don't understand that we're respawning. It was so video game-esque. It was the cheapest thing about the show, and it's the only time I questioned, this isn't very realistic. That's my big quibble.
I agree with that. I think one of the only things is like if you have someone who's trained as a SEAL, not all the characters are, but Mo is supposed to be great, obviously. So you have Rafe and Ben, and let's just say I've heard this brought up in the books that one trained SEAL gunfighter is worth like 10 insurgents,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? If you want the viewer to feel like they're in danger, they can't be going up against 3 dudes. They're gonna fucking wax them every time. And so I think the numbers is kind of trying to make you nervous. But here is one of my quibbles: is I don't like how close to death Ben comes in the finale. I think he's
Mm,
like on the brink. He's doing the breathing thing. It reminded me a lot of Lone Survivor, which he was also
mm,
in.
yeah.
But I
He
think
talked about Rogan. He was on Rogan, talked a lot
yeah,
about filming Lone Survivor. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just think my problem is we know he survives. We know he makes it. Like,
Right.
stop trying to really lay in. Like, how many minutes are we just focused on him popping up, shooting, and then breathing. He's injured, popping up, shooting, and it's like we know he's struggling. He's probably not going to make it. So like, let's get to what's going to save him here. And then those Kuds guys do like the little L ambush, or they try to do one,
Right.
and it doesn't obviously work out too well for them. But I just didn't like how long they try and build suspense with Ben being okay when I know he's going to be okay.
Yeah.
He's alive in another series that takes place in the future. Now, the greatest part about that scene and the redeeming quality is the reveal of the Winkler R&D
Yes.
tomahawk. You see a silhouette on someone's back, and you know that shit is getting laid deep, and
Silhouette was
it
awesome.
is super satisfying. I feel like it redeemed any misuse of it, not necessarily misuse of it, but maybe disuse, I guess is a
Yeah.
better word, of its lack of use in the first season. Now, I do like its use in the first season. There's a really great scene in the finale where he goes up against Cowboy Cerrone, is acting as a security guy, and he gets it into the side of his head. But
He used it in
I
the
just,
cartel house too, didn't he? Did he
yeah,
not?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, to gut. He
That was
has
pretty good.
two at the
He guts the
house,
guy in
and I
bed. Yeah.
think yeah, he leaves one attached to the beam where he makes the guy walk and gut himself.
Right.
So I think one gets
It's
left
better
there. So he
here.
has. I
Much
agree.
better Winkler cameo here. Much better.
I
A
think so.
little
It's
drawn out though.
less.
You're right about the suspense because the whole time while this is happening, I'm like, either his trap is going to work and he's just going to blow all these guys through some detonation that he set up, because that's the force multiplier, right? One guy acting like he's 50. It's like the freaking Patriot,
Yeah,
aim small, miss small. I'm like, there's no other way he gets out of this. Or I was thinking it could be a stand down order. So I'm like, maybe these guys get a stand down order from somebody high up, someone Iran. I was like, okay, the German military could come, but I don't know how that would resolve. That would just escalate things, German
yeah,
intelligence. And then so I'm like, the only other option is the cavalry comes and somebody calls in the cavalry. They gave me so much time with the suspense of like, he can't win. I know he can't win. They're visually telling me he's not going to win. And they played it out so long, it let my mind wander to all these other scenarios. And I concluded, oh, wait, Reese just has to come. And I think if he came earlier, I wouldn't have gotten there myself, or I wouldn't have played it over in my head. And if he just came in the middle of the fight and he just like lines up next to Ben behind the sandbags and they're shooting dudes together, and then Ben gets shot in the fight, I
yeah.
would have liked that a little more than the whole like bleed out Hollywood scene. I'm going to die. Woe is me. My friend's here. Yay. Yeah. That's a
If
good
I
call.
yeah. Yeah, I think, and then the only other thing that I would nitpick is, why is a active SEAL team, all of Bravo Company, for some reason deployed
On
to
R&R
help
at the same time.
to help ground branch while they're actually rotating out of their deployment.
Long live the
Um,
Brotherhood, man.
yeah, yeah.
That's why.
I mean, all of the stuff in the first season of Terminal List is like the rule breaking initial. Let's just say everybody's used to playing by the book, and then once Reese starts breaking the rules and Ben starts breaking the rules, this is like new territory for them. But this is an enormous, from what I can tell, unless I talk to somebody that says different, this is an enormous rule break that seems out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
But it is awesome, and I will forgive it because of how good it plays out. So
Yeah, some things you have to forgive. And Chris Pratt kind of talked about this. If it's the 80-20, where Hollywood is like the other way, 80-20, they'll listen to you 20% of time and like try to make it realistic with what the actual operators advise and tell them, and then throw it out the window. They're doing 80-24. And so if this is the 20% we've got to forgive, I'm okay with that. If the Cuds Force thing of like too many of these random operators spawning in European cities is what I got to forgive just so that there's awesome action, great. I just think you could have been smarter about that action and the villains who go after these guys. Think of like Bourne or something, right? The villains that you're up against or he's up against in the random streets of Zurich or wherever they are, I feel like they're smarter villains. They're not just like, let's spawn 100 dudes and have them shoot out. Let's not make them stormtroopers, right? Like these guys had stormtrooper syndrome. They're just here in numbers. They're duds, and we just mow them down. Yes, it's fun. Do it once. They did it like 3 times, and I just had too much stormtrooper syndrome. I would rather have a smarter enemy. I would rather have Iran being a lot more clandestine, if you will, or the battles that Ben has to fight on the streets of Europe are not just massive shootouts. I wish it was more like when Mo escapes, when Mo has to escape the meeting with the scientist where he gets the bearings. I thought that was more realistic of how a ground branch op would go. Like they had 3 exit routes. They were all compromised. They had to go through alleyways. Someone on comms had to direct him around the corner. He had to fight a dude in like a hardware store where he picks up the sledgehammer. Landry had to come at the right moment with the exfil and get in the van. I feel like that's more of what I expect as an action scene in a CIA thriller, and not just let's spawn a mini paramilitary army in the middle of whatever.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. It is a lot like Skyfall.
yeah.
What was your favorite? I have a favorite line of episode 6. I'd probably have to think about the finale, but I definitely have one that stood out, and it's because it is a reference to something else. Do you have a favorite line from 6, which is the plane shootout episode and the bearings? Anything like
I mean,
that you
obviously
enjoyed?
with the title, they want you to stick with a pawn can take down a king, but for me, it's just a little
Yeah,
too on the nose cliche.
yeah,
I think I go back to, I didn't pick any of these out, so you're putting me on the spot, but I think episode 6, it has to be that conversation I read before. That's not who we are. That's not us. And then Fog of War, brother. I think that whole conversation just is exactly what I would say. Well, I'm curious of
yeah.
yours.
So the Rafe stuff is for sure great, and that's towards the beginning. Mine is towards the end, and it's whenever they realize the bearings are real and they get back in the truck, and it's before the saw comes out. But it's Landry, Mo, and Ben talking about what the fuck are we gonna do?
What are
And
we going to
I
do?
think is that the point they get the text that tells them that Jed's the bad guy.
And that's right
And
when
so
Tal
then
sends him the picture of Jed
yeah,
with
okay.
Cyrus.
So Mo says say when, and that is a reference to Tombstone with Doc Holliday, and it is
Oh,
awesome.
oh, that's sick.
It,
I
it is
wouldn't have picked
a
up on that,
cool.
but yeah,
It's
that's
a
good.
cool little line. Yeah, they're like basically trying to think about what they should do, and Mo looks at him and says, "Say when," and so then they get out of the car, grab the saw. The plane's starting to spin up, and try and get out of there.
That was another one of those tense moments on the tarmac where you could feel, they're such good actors. You could feel their frustration. You could feel their anger. It's like seething through every pore of their body that they got played. And they realize they only have one option, which is stop the plane, like get the bearings back. And when they have to come to that realization that the tension in that car is palpable. I love that scene. That was it maybe again it's one of those that this is slightly more unrealistic or harder to believe that this bearing exchange would go down this way. But at the same time, that's the part I'm willing to forgive because you made such a tense scene, and then that shootout mowing down the plane was
Yeah,
phenomenal. It was great.
yeah, I'm with you. I think good.
I was going to say we kind of have to really get to the very end. I'm curious what you thought of, because another conversation you asked about one-liners. I bet we can dig into some brilliant stuff from Jed at the table with Ben in his house when he's pouring the
Yeah,
whiskey.
I
That
feel
was a
like
good
that
conversation.
conversation, it was a good conversation, but it didn't stick with me
Mm,
as much as like the Rafe conversation does. So if you
maybe
have stuff on the
mistimed?
Jed conversation, no, not mistimed. I
No?
love the vibe and I love everything about it. I don't know. It it was I don't know. There isn't anything I could say that would like make it better. It was like well timed. It's a breath of it's a breather break from action.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good conversation, cool setting. It's like the guy who who tried to play the badass meets his creation. Basically, it's like Frankenstein's
Yeah,
monster meeting
exactly.
Frankenstein. Um, you know,
Completely.
I don't know. It's just the context and the content of the conversation is what I think
Is
wasn't
yeah.
great. But go ahead.
I think maybe it just came to me now, and it was actually something you said earlier. I think I actually liked the content. I liked the dialogue. I thought it was good. But maybe it's the context of things across the show were just a little too easy. That might be my other quibble, is they almost teed things up too much. It almost dumbed down the audience of like, we're going to tell you what's going to happen. And then when it happens, you're not that surprised. Most of the time, there were a few big twists. And I think in this one, it was like, we knew Landry took care of Golubev, the money launderer guy. We know, what's his name? Mo took care of the other guy. So it's
Yeah.
like now we know Ben,
Which I
and
love. The Mo one's great, but go ahead.
And who did Mo kill? I'm just trying to think back to it.
I think it was maybe the other brother that was involved with Iran. He was at a soccer game with his kids, and I thought it was the kid that got
the motorcycle
so he's
bomb.
at the soccer.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it was Cyrus. It was Cyrus.
He's replicating.
Yeah. He's replicating what Cyrus did to, or Jed and Cyrus did to Elisa.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, Mo's facial expressions. I think he's the best actor in the show, hands down. His facial expression just through the motorcycle helmet, looking in the window. And the timing of how long he pauses for, it's like not a full second, but it's not a flyby. It's like this very crisp, like half second with that stare, staring
it's like
daggers
he says
at the dude.
dialogue. He says dialogue with his eyes.
With his
like,
eyes.
How do you like that, motherfucker? Is
and the other time
line
he did
gets
it
delivered
100%. And the other time he did it was at the checkpoint going into Mosul.
Yeah.
He tells an entire story with his face, and it's phenomenal. Even when the team's together, he's always kind of looking the other way. It's always like, I'm not one of you, but I am one of you for my own country. I'm the Iraqi version of you. I'm the one who's saving my country, putting my ass on the line the same way you do for the America. And so he's like looking away like this outsider, kind of like he has a different perspective. But he is one of them. So he's one of them and he's not one of them at the same time. And he plays it perfectly when he's sitting there in all of the conversations with the team. But yeah, so he kills Cyrus with the soccer at the soccer game. Great kill. So it just telegraphed to you like, oh, we have a montage of everyone getting revenge. Tal handed him the folder on Jed with the evidence. So it's like, okay, Ben is clearly the one to go after Jed. So when he's sitting there in the house, I was like, oh, telegraphed. And then when he doesn't kill Jed, I was like, okay, also kind of telegraphed. Because why would they collect all this evidence? If you collected all the evidence, then you're just going to off the guy. Why make the case against him? So I was like,
I mean, just to clear themselves. Yeah,
Sure.
I'm with you. I felt like there was no weight or consequence to the conversation. It was like they already had all the evidence against Jed. He can't talk his way out of it. The content of the conversation isn't going to change the result. And so I was like, well, they got it wrapped up. And so like, it's not that I didn't pay attention, but I felt like it didn't have weight to it. Whereas like usually in those conversations like that, when there's a breather like that and those two characters would run into each other, I feel like it could have been delivered as if Ben's missing something and he is either able to gather it or he proves after the conversation he has it. Now, they started doing this in film and TV long ago of like, oh, I recorded this whole conversation. You just admitted to everything.
Right.
Now,
exactly.
I'm happy they didn't go that route. I'm happy they didn't go that route.
Completely
but
agree.
The next scene I want to talk about is so does I want to say he gets the visit on his boat next.
Yes. That's another thing that I think disappointed me, because as good as the Vic Rodriguez drop was, I think you could have honestly cut right to him interviewing in Langley. Like, I think the cut to him pulling up at the gates at the Bush Intelligence Center in Langley.
Yeah.
The final cut, that plus his interview or his polygraph, I think would have been enough. I don't know this Dashman or Dasher character. I don't know if they're teeing him up to be somebody at Ground Branch that Ben will work with in season 2, like an off book.
I think so because of who that. I think so because of who that actor is.
The actor is
Pablo. Yeah. Pablo Schreiber. Yeah.
I don't need that though. That I feel like that's cheap. I feel like if you want him to be a big part of the next season, put him in episode 1. Have him do something big in episode 1 of like, let's establish him as the guy who recruited Ben. I don't think we needed it here, and it was already dragging out too much the end. Like when they take down Jed and they blow up Cyrus and they kill all the other guys, I'm like, okay, this is the final montage. And then there's one cutscene, show's over. But they did like 3 or 4 montages, and it's like, you're clearly just doing this to set up something next. I'd rather you just wrap up the story as the story needs to be wrapped.
In my opinion, I agree with you, but Dash can't be in the first episode. It has to be Jed that recruits them because Jed is he's on the other team. This is all deception, and Jed is trying to find scapegoats, and that's what Rafe and Ben are. I think he recruits them because they're pipe hitters, but he can also pin stuff on them. Whereas if Dash does it, he works for Vic at Ground Branch.
Oh, I mean next
Vic
season
runs a tight ship. Oh yeah. Yeah,
don't put Dash in this season at all. Don't make up a character in the 11th hour.
When you said first episode to recruit him, I thought you meant the first episode of the season, like how Jed had recruited them in Germany.
When Jed recruits them in Germany, I thought it was perfect. And I think, not to get us off topic, I think this entire show hinges on Jed. if you buy Jed from the moment he's selling them, he's preying on their vulnerabilities, knowing what it means to them to get kicked out of the teams. And he's telling them, I can get you back. I basically can be your savior, and I can get you, I need shooters. So he's like preying on their vulnerabilities, and I bought it. I was like, he's this old-timey spy. He's this legend from Beirut. And like,
Yeah. Well,
I'm excited for this. I was
he
sold.
absolutely offers Ben and Rafe what they want, which is
Exactly.
to make a difference and to get basically their little revenge on someone who they hate.
Completely. But he's
yeah.
using them. They're pawns.
So then next after that, which I think that scene drags a little bit whenever Dash
Agreed.
visits him on the boat.
Completely.
I think the next scene is truthful, conclusive, or deception indicated.
Perfect.
Is the next scene.
Just cut to that. That's all I needed.
That is the first moment you really see true emotion come out of Ben Edwards. When he hears that his wife is going to leave him, you see nothing. When you see him finally reading voicemails or watching videos of his wife on his phone at the Skyfall house, not much, but he's reminiscing. This interview, polygraph, is absolutely the first emotion you see pop from him, which is great acting by Taylor Kitsch. And then I think the deception indicated and truthful conclusive results on the screen are absolutely book reader
straight from
nods.
the book.
Even though it seems maybe to non-book readers, if you're listening, it may seem as like who the fuck cares? It's like a true or false, lie detector test, and it's a little bit more than that. It has a lot more meaning behind it, because eventually in the books, whenever Reese takes the same test to join Ground Branch, those results are how they are described in the book, which is different than, oh, you lied or you told the truth. It's like, I don't know. It's just something that's very specific to these books.
It's very specific to the book. And that scene was filmed as I would have seen Reese going through the polygraph on page. Like when I read it on page, I was imagining something so similar to that. That was one of those perfect moments of they balanced the book, a nod to the readers. They put it on film where it needed to be in the story and timed it and placed it and wrote dialogue, and it worked, but they changed it, right? It wasn't Reese going through the polygraph. He's not going into the CIA.
I'm pretty sure the questions are even in the same order as they are in the book.
I think you might be right.
I think.
Yeah. Yep. There's just so many echoes to it. That one was done absolutely perfectly and tastefully. Between that and the Vic Rodriguez as the 1-2 punch at the end, they don't make sense. They don't make as much sense or have as much meaning unless you're a book reader, but they also work in universe because Vic Rodriguez is going to come up next. Yeah.
Yeah. I know real quick before we jump to True Believer, are you still good on time?
Yeah, sure. I don't know how much we have to say about True Believer, so maybe you know more than me, but we just do a little conjecture about what we want to see, what's coming.
Well, the only thing I was going to bring up is, like, you had brought up about how after Terminalist, you don't see how we get to True Believer, but now we do, because we got introduced to these characters, and you see how this writing is going to work without the sections. In my opinion, they got rid of the unreliable narrator. They had to. B, I think they realized it doesn't work as well as they thought, and I think they're just adapting the books moving forward, because I've heard Chris Pratt actually talk about that recently, how the rest of the seasons are just going to be book adaptations. So where I was going with this is, I agree with you, but I think at the time that they did just the first season, that was all they were guaranteed, and I think they put all their eggs in one basket. And I think that we don't know if we're getting a True Believer, so we're not going to end this on an absolute cliffhanger. But he is on the sailboat, which is a little bit of one.
That's true.
But I think where you see us leading this into True Believer, they couldn't have done this with the first season, because they weren't equipped with the knowledge that they were going to get renewed. Absolutely. And you don't waste time building story when it could be serving the season we're in. And so I think that's maybe why I think this came up as a good way to get to True Believer. And I think it was released for that purpose. A lot of the cast is going to be in True Believer. So something I wanted to talk to you about regarding True Believer is not only we already touched on the first 2 episodes are sailing in Africa. That they shot on location is great. I'm curious to see how they actually change some things. I have a feeling they're going to change it, because if for folks who didn't read the books, in the novel, Ukraine and Russia get into a conflict, and it was written before it actually happened in real life.
Before the conflict.
And I don't know why, but Jack decides to do this. In every novel, he writes about something that is like a real life thing that ends up happening after the book is published. And so he needs to stop picking ridiculous wars to write about. But he had written about it, so I'm curious on what they're going to change that to, what conflict that's
Yeah.
going to change to. But we'll see how that goes. But something came up in an interview that I had never heard before, and if you are familiar at all with the John Krasinski Jack Ryan series,
Yeah, not
it
huge, but familiar. Yeah.
okay, so it ran 4 seasons at Amazon Prime, and they still have a good viewership and good fans, but John Krasinski isn't willing to dedicate 7 months of his life every time they want to film a season. So Amazon announced that they are filming. They're filming it now is a movie that is goes with the series. Okay, not sure if that's going to end up in theaters or if it will just go to Amazon Prime. I have heard in a um, interview with Jack for Cry Havoc that in the future, post True Believer, that we may get films instead of series. But
Hot take.
just your yeah,
I think Savage Son would be an amazing movie. I,
I
I
think so too.
think uh, I think that story would be one of the best plots for an action film I could imagine, and something you want to see on the big screen. So I think for two reasons, both plot, story, and screen, I'd want to see that as a movie in a theater. I think
I
another
agree.
miss, if I'm going to say a miss of season 1 and season 2, it is the timing. I think 7 episodes did not do Dark Wolf justice. I think it was strange. It got a little packed. I really could have used more. Uh, and I don't just say that lightly because I just want more. It's like a lot of fans say that, like, give me more, give me more. No, I think the story demanded more. I think some of the things that were rushed here or clipped together, probably in post production, could have breathed a little more. The way Mo disappears for like 3-4 episodes, well, bring him back and give him another 2 or 3 episodes. The way Jed, kind of when the team was split up, right? It became the Ben and Eliza show. Well, Ben and Eliza had like 2 episodes together on the lam, if you will, with the bearings. We'll give Mo and Landry an episode or 2, or give Jed another episode of him and Cyrus behind the scenes. I want to see them meeting like very clandestinely, like how they're having their meets and any drop boxes and communications. Tal just shows up somewhere and like has the goods to eavesdrop on somebody. I loved when Tal would just like put her hood up, and then like sneak into an apartment building or cross the street. Like I wouldn't mind a whole episode dedicated to Tal's spycraft. So I think the show could have breathed more. So 9-10 episodes, whatever, I think would have been justified for this.
I
And so
agree.
if you now try out movies, some books that work better for a movie, do it, and then maybe a longer book like Only the Dead or whatever the fourth one was, maybe one of those would work better as a series. I think there's an opportunity to really play around in universe and do some different media
I agree. I think that we'll see. I think the Jack Ryan one would be a good format and like example to see
to
if it
see.
works well. And I
Yeah.
think also if it releases on Prime, then so would the James Reese one release on Prime rather than theater. So
Then
we'll see
theaters.
if it gets a
True.
theatrical release. I would be stoked about that. And I think you're right that Savage Son lends itself very
Dude.
well to first, second, third act content.
Completely.
A great finale. It flows. It's the fastest read, but at the time it was the most hefty novel. So I don't understand how something could be more pages than the previous books, but be a faster read. And it's because
Smooth.
of the pacing.
Yep. It
I
flows.
do still hold that at my number one novel, not just in the series, but of all time. So I think it would work well as a movie, but I really think that it's going to depend on the success of like the Jack Ryan one. I think they do
I think you're right.
play around and try and test those things out, because I know that Jack mentioned, and it came up with the same way that uh, basically Chris Pratt is dedicating 7 months of his life to every season of this show, and it's not that it's getting stale, but he has so many other projects that he has to bounce to, and he's filming this in Morocco on location, in
Right.
Paris on location, and stuff, and so basically he's loving it, but they're trying to find a way to make it more digestible for
To
him
balance.
to yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was just curious of your thoughts of that. That was the first time I had heard that. Thought it was a cool idea, and it came from Jack on another interview. So
Yeah. No, that's cool. I will say, if we're talking True Believer, just real quick, I don't mind a change from the Odessa stuff and the Ukraine stuff. I think that story needs a little freshening up and moving away from ripped straight out of the headlines, as you were saying. But I think if it's missing in True Believer, one, Freddie Strain, what he was doing in that cabin, that was rigged or something. And then the other one is the sniper. I think if you don't take from the Odessa scene the sniper, I'm not gonna say too much, but something with a ship and a cargo box and a sniper. If you don't
I'm
then
with you.
transpose that, if they are filming in Morocco for Morocco story or Middle Eastern story, you can easily do it off the Med. If you stick with Israel, Iran, you can do it totally in that part of the world. Wherever they go with this, whatever story they tell, I think, and I don't remember his name, but that villain, the sniper villain, and how much that shot matters in
Yeah.
Reese's life, in global politics. I think you need to have the shot and have that shot matter so much and have high stakes for everyone involved, personally and geopolitically. So I think if you got to capture that, I don't care where you place it. I don't care what conflict you invent. I don't care what part of the world it's in. But that was such a phenomenal part of storytelling that Jack, it was like lightning in a bottle Jack captured with that one. It made True Believer pop. You got to keep that. So I hope they do justice to that.
So that character is a Syrian sniper, and his name is Nizar Katan. And
Nizar Katan.
I think that you actually saw him
in the blood
in Dark. I think you saw him in Dark Wolf.
Nizar Katan.
There is a scene where there's a bad guy at a gun range with a sniper rifle, and he's on the phone with another character, and it is the only scene this character has, and they never reveal to you who he is. I don't believe he's even listed in the credits.
Is that when
but
Cyrus
that could have
is,
been
is practicing at the shooting range too? That scene?
no.
Or
So I
different one?
think Jed Haberford is talking with this guy on the phone, and he maybe is supposed to like run the Quds force, and he's at a gun range. I mean, it could be someone else,
Dude.
but
In next level if that's Nizar Katan. And even if it's not, it's such like a subtle nod to what Nizar Katan becomes as a villain. One
Yeah.
of maybe the top villains in the Jack Carr universe, very possibly. So
yeah, I
that's
think
really
so.
cool.
He
Really
spans
cool.
many books. That the whole point of that book is supposed to be a sniper versus sniper, cat and mouse, globe-trotting novel, and I think it accomplishes that very good. And I think that book's pretty good. But
100% agreed. Well, anything else on your mind? We know you are the Jack Carr boss. Can I just pick your brain for a second on the opening montage?
Sure.
What do you think about seeing Ben's humble abode?
I like it because it's the same as the boat that Reese ends up in going to Africa, and I think it's really awesome. My curiosity lies in are these changes we're seeing throughout, we're seeing maps change from sailing maps to maps of Afghanistan. I know you and I had discussed this in another conversation, but I think that some of that stuff is meant to be okay, this is him transferring from civilian life to military life, right? To being a SEAL. But then in other scenes, that some of the things lead me to believe that it's his transfer, and that boat may have been like his getaway when he was in the SEAL teams, and this transfer is him from SEAL to CIA, because a lot of these things indicate sort of like a downward turn, and him getting his bird stripped and him having to leave the teams in disgrace, basically, I think are big points of like the beginning of a downward spiral. And where we see him at the beginning of the terminal list is he's kind of like the multiple wife, multiple divorce guy, stereotypical, and he just lives on his boat. And so I don't know, it's just probably not important, but just a point of curiosity on my part. Where when did this start? Is this a SEAL team problem or a CIA problem? Because I think where it is important is like, does this downward spiral add into the initial talks of him betraying James?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think it doesn't need to be answered. I think it's just all almost psychological downward spiral at any time, just showing that he's prone to this. And the clean kitchen being replaced with the bottles, empty bottle and pills, spilling out. So yeah, I think any time in his life, leaving CIA, leaving SEALs, going CIA, or something later when he sells out around the time of the Terminalist, any one of those work for me as his psychological downfall and spiral. So yeah,
I'm with you, but that was just me picking that intro part. Love the song choice. So I actually, one of the best things, I think the first season did a really good job with music choices, but this season overall, they did a really big post where each slide was a different episode in the licensed music that they had, and I thought
they went big.
I think the music choices this season were much better than the first season.
I think it was even better. Agreed.
I think that was a big improvement was on the music side. So overall, I think it is an improved season, but I appreciate that first season a bit more now. And so I can't say it's better, but it's on par, and I think it's
Okay.
a great series. So
That's good to hear that you went back and watched season 1 and how Dark Wolf really makes that bump up a little bit in your rankings.
it
So
it
that's good
absolutely
to know.
does. And me just being like the film buff, there's a lot of practical effects and in-camera work and stuff that they do that may be lost on most viewers, but that I see and I'm like, oh my God, that is awesome. Like there's a scene in there where James is having like a mental breakdown, and the camera basically swivels around him, and he's in civilian uniform, and it swivels through his kitchen and into like basically him remembering an interrogation. And it so then you're in Afghanistan, right? Or in Syria, I think, in the series. And it shows him again in full uniform, from civilian clothes to full uniform, from the kitchen to an interrogation overseas. And Boozer's there, he's in full uniform, and basically he's remembering this. That entire scene is all practical. The camera on the swivel, there is no cut. Whenever Chris leaves camera, he is getting up and changing
He's
clothes on the
changing.
spot and walking into the shot. And
Damn.
basically the set, I mean, there's just stuff like that that I enjoy about filmmaking that is really cool when they pull it off. And it it works because people don't realize what just
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
I notice it, but I'm not saying I'm an expert by any means, but I like stuff like that. But like your average viewer would be like, oh, okay, he's going into like a memory. But like, do you realize like the amount of work and the amount of crew that just took to make this like 15-second shot happen?
It's like a
Like this
Shyamalan
shit's
movie or
crazy.
something. I remember I had a film teacher or a photography teacher, and she broke down this one scene from The Village, and I was like, that movie was kind of okay. I didn't really like it. And she was like, no, let me show you how they move the cameras to get this exact like zoom out and pan through the forest. And I was like,
Yeah.
yo, this becomes a different movie once you know that, and once you have the knowledge of these skills. And I think
Yeah.
that happens here as well. Yeah.
There's a couple of things I know about now that was done during production that the Gilio thought were good ideas that I disagree with, because it's like he left clues for you, but you don't know what you're looking for. It's not a clue
Mm,
anyone would find out unless you know what DeGilio knew, which
mm.
is any scenes and memories with red in them, red clothing or anything like that, they're false.
They're
They're
unreliable. Yeah.
yeah, and it's
A
like
little too
unless you know
meta,
you're
a
looking
little
for.
too subliminal.
Now that I watch it, it's okay, but it like I don't know. I like when clues are left on purpose for people to pick up, and that one is a little too like a bridge too far
Mm.
for an average viewer to grab. Um,
Which is funny because this show almost does the opposite and telegraphs everything to the viewer a little too upfront. So we
yeah,
need kind of a
yeah.
balance. Yeah.
I
This
think
just
it's I
shows a
think it's
little too easy.
yeah, I think it's predictable, but in a way that isn't like overboard.
And then that does allow them to land a few twists that are out of the blue, that hit harder,
Hmm.
because everything else, sometimes there's too many twists. Like I said earlier, too many mystery boxes, too many of those things that you can't quite figure out or keep up with. I didn't see it, but like a Tenet, it's almost too smart for its own good. So I think they balanced it better in this season, and could still
Yeah.
get a little better even in True Believer. So,
Only watch Tenet if you're willing to watch an hour breakdown video from
it,
New Rockstars on YouTube.
which I usually do for almost everything I consume. So, well, dude, it's been a lot of fun. We know when we get Tyler Booher on the show, we are going deep. So, guys, we took you deep into episode 6 and 7 of The Terminalist. What a finale. I am very pleasantly pleased. And I'm not going to ask you to give a letter grade, but I am landing at an A minus. I'm totally blown away. I'm really impressed. I was nervous after the first season. I was like, if this is kind of similar to the first season, I don't know if it's going to bring people to the books. I don't know if it's going to get the numbers on Amazon. I don't know if you're going to draw readers back in or draw viewers back in. And I was pleasantly surprised that I think it's going to do all of that plus more. So shout out to Jack, Jared Shaw, David Giglio, Chris Pratt, Taylor Kitsch, like the whole crew. Shout out to all of them. Fantastic job with this. And thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for making this
I,
for us fans.
I think I'm there. A minus, I think, or B plus at the very least. Like if I had to be a little more critical of things, but I think you really saw a resurgence of the first season. It made it up to number 4 in the top 10, so it was actually in the top 5 for a week or two, and then this was at number 1 consistently upon release. Like this released on Wednesdays,
Yep.
so by
And
Sunday it wasn't
was
at number
there.
1, but the next Wednesday it's back to number 1. So consistently for weeks, this hit number 1, which is great. And then the fact that there was a huge resurgence for the first season is awesome. And I know I had told you, and if the listeners pay attention, at 4th of July this year, so just a few months ago, for I don't know what made it happen, but I think the first season made it back into the top 10, if not top 5. I think maybe it was like number 3 for the day or something like that, which is unique. That a lot of fans thought on, hey, it's 4th of July, let's check out Terminal List again and revisit it. And
Yeah.
so I think that was great.
I think this is just going to continue to bring people to the books, bring people to the universe. And this is the catalyst the universe needed to really hit next level. And like I said, maybe one day make movies. So that would be a great end goal if we can get there. Let's get
For
to
sure.
Savage Son at the very least. Like if Amazon can just greenlight that, good. That's when you know you're rolling. And I think once that happens, then it's an open canvas to do whatever you want after that.
They can't say it, but they've done everything but say it, is that we're getting more. So
more of that and more Dark
we'll
Wolf.
see how
so
it goes.
Keep it coming.
Yep.
Inject it into my veins. Well, thanks, Tyler. Always great chatting with you. Too bad we couldn't have Chris, but next time you're on, we'll definitely see if we can get Chris involved and get the crew together. So thanks for coming.
Sounds good. No problem. Thank you.